Odra scowled slightly, getting frustrated. He had been working this imago over and over in his head, visualizing every specific detail for days, but still, no good. With his focused mage sight zeroed in on the layered sigils he was dressing upon one another, he was trying to merge and fuse them. The end result? A pathway right through to the disconnected sanctum. He wasn't sure what had happened to his former mentor's stronghold, but he knew it was fitting about from place to place, sporadically and without ever setting root anywhere. His eyes narrowed again, and for a second he managed a tenuous grasp of something in there, something sympathetic to his connections, but then it flared and burnt out, failing again. Finally, after days of practice and refinement, he knew he had it. He allowed himself a few gratuities, sleep, a shower, some of his sharper wardrobe. He knew Elixir was still alive in there, and he'd be ashamed of his former charge if he had been slumming it. Remember, love, everyone suspects subterfuge from the dregs. Nobody expects to get buggered by a right gentleman. He smiled despite himself. It with a flare of his nimbus and the reminder of the words from his former teacher, fire, smoke, chains, wings, and hands of the damned pulled, fusing that sigil at him, and he split it, stepping through the gap. The sights that met him within the sanctum were beyond definition. Now, to get Electa out of her, quote-unquote, safest place. Hey everyone, welcome back to The Pit. I'm Chris, Librarian of The Pit, here with another entry into our comprehensive guide to magic from Mage the Awakening 2nd Edition. This is likely to be a smaller, bite-sized entry into the series, but I really like the concept they present here. As I've touched on in other entries, the 13 practices existed in 1st edition, but really, it was quite a negligible mechanic. As with much of the 1st edition, it was there as a decent idea, but it really came down to being fluff content. However, as magic and casting in general was massively overhauled for the vastly superior 2nd edition, the practices were given much more spotlight. Let's get into it. Practice makes perfect. Magic as we know it is now no longer boiled down to being a secret tongue from a lost civilization that pulls magic down from on high. No. In 2nd edition, magic is quite literally an art, not an inherent skill. Of course you have your roads and praxis and whatnot, but that alone does not a mage make. Magic is the ability now to see through the lie created by the exarchs in the true world of the supernal, and alter those pieces of supernal bleeding through. I know I've said this already, but it's important. What this means is that in order to hone your ability with magic, that you need to keep trying and trying and trying, until the mage's ability to see through that lie and work through the supernal practice requires education. The stereotype of scientists sleeping in labs, of alchemists playing at glass measurements all day, or librarians like myself playing with their books for days on end, well, this isn't a stereotype for no reason. The Awakened are nothing if not studious. Well, the ones that survive anyway. And their way of classifying their skill of magic has a measurable standard they use. Each spell or casting of any kind falls under these 13 specifications, and we'll cover them here and now. The Initiate practices: compelling, knowing, and unveiling. Needless to say, these are the lowest tiers of practice. At this point, the student may be newly awakened, have a dabbling interest, have a minor arcana education, or have just started along the education of an arcana. The reasons for lack of education are as countless as the reasons to desire education, but it doesn't matter. To begin along any trail, you have to take a first step, and so we find ourselves at the 1-dot initiate rank. The first we'll cover is compelling. Compelling is nudging an already potential outcome into your general direction. The good news is these levels of practices are very easy to learn and also very safe to use. It's hard to invoke paradox when the event that occurred may have even happened without awakened interference. The next practice is knowing. This practice delivers, knowledge directly to the mage. This is a knowledge that comes right from the truth, no lie interference, unless something is specifically trying to block this practice. This is tied directly to whatever arcana the mage is using. It needs to be said that this is a bit of a vague description of things. The book only gives 3 specifics on the page, and in the end, as most things as in any mage game, it comes down to storyteller discretion. Knowing is quite basic, fortunately. Using space to know the exact location you're traveling, death to see how a corpse met their end, mind to get a feel of someone's emotions, you get the idea. The practice of unveiling reveals hidden things to the mage, using death to peer into twilight, prime to check on the flow of mana, spirit to see through the gauntlet, perhaps forces to pick up radio waves. It's the practice of learning to see and perceive the unseen. As said, the initiate ranking is like baby steps, teetering on the edge of truly awakened ability, but also the cornerstones of casting. Many of the further practices are just evolved forms of the initiate rank practices, in fact, so let's move on. The apprentice practices, 2-dot, ruling, shielding, and veiling. As we move further along in our studies, we come to the 2-dot apprentice ranking practices. These are ruling, shielding, and veiling. At this point, we're smirking at the lie. Not quite slapping it in the face, but working through it. Ruling is the enhanced version of compelling. The mage can now not just nudge things in a certain direction, they can work with pre-existing conditions despite the lie. Making water flow uphill or take shape, people or animals made to take simple directions, time can be sped up briefly or slowed down. Again, it's the method of manipulating pre-existing things that already exist within the lie. Shielding, also called warding practice spells, provide protection under a specific arcana's purview. The Death Arcana would allow you to strike back and get shades from Twilight. Spirit allows animism creatures from the Gauntlet to be interacted with, or perhaps a Fate warding spell mixed with space could luckily make bullets miss you for a bit. Veiling is the next practice of the Apprentice. This serves two different useful things. Firstly, it can allow you to use the Arcana to obscure yourself in a multitude of ways. Firstly, you use a specific Arcana to hide yourself. Perhaps space allows you to hide in a corner that's just a bit too deep to see into, or fate makes people accidentally not see you as they look past. The other side of this is hiding from a specific Arcana. Death can allow you to seem like a ghost and go unnoticed, or a spirit veiling spell can hide you from the vision of a werewolf. 1,000,001 uses veiling. As you can tell, we're getting more and more advanced in our practices, and we're only at apprentice level. The disciple practices, 3. Fraying, perfecting, and weaving. The 3. Disciple level of training is where we begin to really see the potential power of the Arcana under well-trained and researched minds. Again, just to point out that these are only level 3. I'm just taking a moment to clarify why mages are so dangerous. They're quite human, getting a taste of near-godlike power, and there's a reason hubris is their morality trait. It would be quite easy to become obsessed with obtaining more and more power, and it only gets more hazardous from here. The first practice is fraying. This is quite obviously a practice built on degrading and breaking things down. Dampen a fire using forces, dim a brilliantly lit room with primer space, or even now inflicting bashing level damage on targets directly using Arcana. The mage is now capable of freezing people with a touch, a psychic or electric blast, or perhaps blasts of dazzling light. Regardless, at this level the mage can only perform bashing damage to their victim, but it's certainly ramping up. The next practice, perfecting, is really the opposite. Using the Arcana, the mage fortifies something or makes it more resilient. Perhaps their jacket is now capable of taking damage instead of a mage, or a glass window won't break and splinter against them. Perhaps someone's destiny becomes more profound due to a fate spell. The last, weaving, is again almost a further evolved version of compelling. Now the mage can use existing material and morph it into entirely different functions. Solid matter converted to liquid, though still with the same makeup of matter, a sword enchanted to harm the ephemeral, or a few seconds of time rewritten. Now we're cooking with fire. Whether it's hot or not depends on the practice. The adept practices, 4. Patterning and unraveling. At this point, the mage has come quite far in their training and are a true force to be reckoned with, no matter the Arcana that is their major or minor. Any mage with the 4. Adept level of training is quite skilled, and the Awakened always recognize the studious nature. The first practice is patterning. At this point, the mage can completely transform something that falls under the umbrella of an Arcana they wield. They can teleport using space, literally rewriting where they had been moments ago. They could use life to completely change shape or regrow limbs, or completely rewrite or erase memories altogether using mind. Then we have unraveling. This practice is like fraying to the 10th degree, significantly breaking down things under an Arcana's umbrella or dealing severe damage. A mage trained to this extent can quell storms, throw fire, completely dispel another mage's spell, cause health to completely fail, or even turn matter to dust. Lethal damage now, and with a mana spent, aggravated. Nasty stuff. Remember how I said many of the practices are evolved forms of prior ones? We're at top tier power now with the last 2 practices. The master practices, 5. Making and unmaking. In my opinion, you are no longer a mage, you are a force of nature. Among the Awakened, you have attained the 5. Rank of Master, and this is no joke. For an arrogant and powerful community of the Awakened to recognize this, you must truly be something special. I mean, what can they do to stop you if you claim that title and you choose to back it up? They're fleas unto a god. They can do jack shit about it. So let's talk about what you can do. With the making practice, it allows for the creation of phenomena, creating new spirits entirely, not just creating doorways to Twilight or the underworld itself, but literally ripping holes right to it. Time expanded by literally creating minutes, hours, days. Using Prime, you could create entire new forms of energy. One wonders if they could create a new soul. And now the most dangerous practice, in my opinion, unmaking. Annihilation, pure and simple. Life literally just taken. 2 locations merged and slammed into one another using space. Hallows and Verges wiped using Prime. We're not doing damage to targets anymore. They're destroyed altogether. Wiped off the fucking map. And that, again, is probably the... Yeah, I think that's the top tier level of fucking shit up in the Chronicles of Darkness, next to Demon. In closing, Mage is not for those characters who are steadfast against some further education. I mean, yeah, you could play a base mage using rotes and using them the way vampires use disciplines, but you'd be missing out on a major component of the game. Half the adventure is seeking out the best ways to turn that imago into form, then function. Playing the character seeking out studies to craft ever more powerful spells to overwhelm less capable foes appears, well, what's better than that? I truly hope you found this entertaining and educational, and I'll be back real soon to help you on your path of scholarly training. After all, I'm a librarian. Thank you, this is Chris, and have a great night wherever you are, above or below.